So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I take my watercolor paintings that I've already created, and I've scanned them in, and I'm going to be editing them on Photoshop, and I'm going to be turning them into seamless patterns. So that's the process I'm going to show you. This is not a Photoshop tutorial. I am not an expert at all, so just wanted to put that out there. This is just my process of editing my watercolor paintings and turning them into a seamless pattern on Photoshop. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing that I do when I'm designing a new pattern is to open up Photoshop, do a blank template. I usually do 10,000 by 10,000 pixels, resolution 300. Yeah, leave the rest of them there, create. And then I go into my downloads, and let's just start with this one. So I just drag the image to Photoshop that I've already scanned in, and I actually just use my camera to take a photo of this. I start by rasterizing the layer to make it editable, and just gonna get rid of all of these extra pieces. So I want to get rid of the background, so I'm going to change up the levels a little bit. Just make the backgrounds a little bit even. Let's do that. Go in with my magic wand tool and get rid of all of that. You can see that there's still a few pieces here. So I'm going to go in with my eraser tool and just go in and kind of clean up the rest of this. And sometimes it's helpful to do a different color background to kind of be able to see all of those little pieces. See, that's a lot clearer. You can see all of that I need to get rid of. So let's go back, make sure I'm on the right layer, and just erase all of these little specks and dots, because I do not want those coming up on my pattern. And honestly, this whole process of cleaning up these little watercolor pieces is kind of, it can be pretty time consuming, but it is really necessary for the overall pattern, because I want it to be printed well. Like the final pattern, I don't want it to have these weird little spots all over it. So it is definitely something that is worth the time. And usually I like to just like sit on my couch or watch a show or listen to a podcast or something, and makes it pretty easy or like pretty relaxing. But either way, I won't show you all of the little pieces of this just because it's going to be pretty lengthy, but that's the general idea. Is I just start out by cleaning up all of these elements, and then once I'm done and have them all arranged, then I can start designing the pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and finish editing all these little elements, and then I'll show you the next step once I'm done. Okay, so I've finished uploading all of the different elements. I've gotten my birds here, and the parrot, I actually did this one last year, so I'm going to add this one, maybe play around with that, we'll see. I have all of my flowers. These I actually used from the patterns I created last year, just so that I don't have to go in and like repaint a bunch of flowers. I can recycle the ones that I did last year. So I may end up painting some more flowers, but I'm going to use these first and see how that is. All of the fruits here, and then all of the leaves. So now I'm going to go in and start kind of working with the colors. I have my mood board popped up here. So these are the colors that I'm going for, and I want to make sure that everything kind of fits with this color scheme. So I started changing up the color of the toucan here because I kind of want it to go, it doesn't have to match like perfectly with this, but I wanted it to go a little bit more on the like blue-green side rather than this like navy blue. I still love this color, but I want to try to make sure that everything is pretty cohesive. So I'm going to go in and kind of color correct all of these different elements, and yeah, then I'll start arranging them into all the patterns. So I'm going to show you how I do some of these color corrections. I'm going to go into my little hue and saturation tool, and I'm going to grab the blue, the cyan, and you can see I can make it more green or make it pink purple. So I'm just going to pull it down here a little bit and go into the blues and do something similar. And I'm actually going to darken it a little bit more, give it some more contrast here, maybe add a little more saturation, and just kind of go back and forth between these for a while until it reaches the color that I want it to. Still want it to look fairly realistic, but I kind of like that. And again, I can always go back in and work on it a little bit more later. I'm going to go in with the yellow and also do something similar for the beak, and yeah, just adjust it just a little bit. I'm going to go in, change the reds here too, just a tad. And yeah, I kind of like that. So again, it doesn't have to match perfectly. It's just I want to get it a little bit closer to these colors so that it's more cohesive. Okay, so I finally finished arranging all of these elements into a little pattern, and I'm going to transform it into a seamless repeating pattern. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this group, and I'm going to merge everything together. So this is now on its own little layer. So what I'm going to do is use my little rectangle tool, and I'm going to take the very edge of this and highlight the top of it and zoom in here just to make sure that this line is exactly on the square right here. I want it to be pretty precise. So I'm going to copy it and then paste it in place, zoom out, and I'm going to hold the shift key, drag it all the way down to the bottom, and then I make sure that it's placed correctly. It needs to be pretty precise. And then I'm going to combine those two layers together, and then go back with the rectangle tool and grab the left side. Again, zooming in, making sure that the line is exactly where the square is at to make it precise. And once that's good, I'm going to cut it again, and then I'm going to paste it in place and drag it over to the right side of the page while holding the shift key so that everything stays exactly where it needs to be. And then I'm going to just zoom in one more time to make sure that it's actually where it's supposed to be. I like to double and triple check everything. And then I'm going to merge those two layers together, and there is my little seamless pattern. I'm going to get rid of that background real quick and just place that square up in the corner, and this is the real test of whether it's going to be seamless or not. I'm going to copy that and then paste it and move it right next to it and make sure that everything looks like it's matched up and it doesn't have any weird like gaps or anything like that. And then I'm just going to kind of adjust it a little bit more, zooming in one more time to make sure that it's all where it needs to be, and then kind of readjust it just on that little page. And then I'm going to copy it one more time and move those two squares down to get kind of a larger perspective of the whole pattern, just to kind of see it from a little bit further away to make sure that it looks like a repeating pattern. And again, this is where I kind of check again to make sure if there's any gaps. Maybe I want to go back in and refill them, but this one I think looks pretty good. Once I'm done with this, I can kind of go in and like play around with the background. So I'm going to throw on that like blue, teal, turquoisey background color that I had before, just to kind of see how I feel about that one. I can make those adjustments, maybe lighten up the color a little bit, or just change it entirely. This is where it's a lot of fun to just like play around with all the different colors in the rainbow. This is one of my favorite parts, but it can be hard because I can be a little indecisive. And I also, since I have created my mood board, I go back in and like kind of double check that the colors are similar to the whole color scheme that I'm going for as well. So I'll play around with the hue and saturation a little bit to just make sure that it's all on board with the color scheme. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I love how this one's turned out so far.